Hello everyone and welcome back to Bobbin's Minecraft Let's Play series featuring the Infinity Evolved Skyblock mod pack. You're watching episode 25. We're going to do big reactors today. This is the platform that had all the logistics pipe crafting stuff on it. It has all been cleared off at this point, and I'm actually going to build the reactors on this platform. This pipe in the middle is going to go away sometime pretty soon, but as you can see, it's a really busy pipe and I need to actually make provision for it in little bits so that I don't have stuff piling up in unexpected places in the base. I'm probably going to start by taking and installing a tesseract to get items from the main processing area down below into the applied energistics system. Other than that, I've just been doing some cleanup here. This stuff has most of its crafting removed. The stuff that is still here is the stuff that's going to stay. And I have set up a stub here for automatically crafting some of these things and keeping a certain number of them stocked in the AE system. At this point, it's not actually completed, but that is going to be on the agenda very soon. The extra crafting that was removed from there has been moved over here, so I've got a few more machines over here. One of the machines that I have over here is a solar panel. This is the advanced solar panel. There is one more tier to the solar panels, and when we make one ultimate solar panel, there will be an achievement for getting that. We're nowhere close to it. I was looking at the crafting. The crafting isn't too bad. It'll take a while for the AE system to sort of grind through all of it. But I am critically short on one material that's needed, and that is the electrotine that comes from sifting sand. And so I'm going to have to scale up my electrotine production at some point rather drastically, and I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do that. But it's probably going to involve sifting sand and maybe some mining. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to do any mining. We'll just have to see. Other than that, nothing much going on between episodes, except that I have been making the components for big reactors. I am going to set up 2 reactors right over here, and they are going to be large. They're going to be 9 by 9 by 9 exterior, 7 by 7 by 7 interior, and I'm going to set them up so that one is burning yellorium and the other one is burning plutonium, which is what you get when you refine the waste from your reactors. Essentially, each piece of yellorium can act as fuel twice. Once as yellorium, and then over and over again, halving each time as plutonium. So 2 reactors will actually balance that, and I'll be able to keep both of them running, and it will just take yellorium as input and be done with it. But I've got to set all that stuff up, and what I found in making the components is that if we go into here and look at those components, most of the components are not just terribly, terribly bad. The reactor casing is pretty simple. The only difference from the default on this one, it looks like, is it's got some electrical steel involved, and maybe the fact that it's using steel rather than iron is not purely by default, but I've seen that in other mod packs. So the reactor casing is not too bad. The reactor glass is using hardened glass or quartz. The reactor controller needs a computer, and some of these special chipsets from Buildcraft, the chipsets from Buildcraft aren't too bad. The computer also isn't too bad, although it does require that you have applied energistics going in order to get this logic processor. So they do sort of put big reactors after AE in the progression. The control rod, not too bad. The power tap requires an MFE. At this point, an MFE should not be a problem for you if you've gotten this far in the mod pack. I had to set up a recipe for it, but all of these components were reasonably straightforward at that point. The access port is the default. I'm not going to be using the coolant ports, the RedNet ports, the computer ports. I'm not going to set up the turbine. I'm just going to go straight for the reactor. The reactor glass, pretty straightforward. The component that I had trouble with, and I still don't have enough of them to completely build out 2 reactors, so I'm going to completely build one and mostly build a second one, but I don't have all the components yet, and that is the fuel rods. The Yellorium fuel rods require hardened glass and pellets of RTG fuel. Now the RTG fuel is requires plutonium, which I really, if I don't have enough of it, I'm close on. I've been running all these reactors around the base generating plutonium for quite some time, so I have a lot of plutonium. Well, not anymore, but I started with a huge amount of plutonium, and now I've got a relatively small amount, but I think it may be enough to finish what I need. The problem I'm having right now is these dense iron plates. You notice that each one requires 9 iron plates, and that's just, and it's a lot. You've got to have 6 dense iron plates for each one of these things, and each, so 6 times 9, that's 54. You got to have 54 iron plates for each pellet of RTG fuel so that you can make a fuel rod. And I'm making large, big reactors, so I'm going to need lots of fuel rods. So it's taking some time to get all that. However, I do have enough completed to completely build my initial reactor and make a good start on the second one. So I'm going to go ahead and pull some materials out here and get started. The first thing I'm going to want to need is the casing. So let's take a bunch of these reactor casings here, and where I'm going to build them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, is right over here. So I'm going to build a nice square base. And let me just do the same over here. And then I'll fly up and we'll survey it. Alright. So my reactors are going to go right there. And they're going to be 9 tall. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So when you build your big reactor, the first thing you need to do is you actually have to have the outer frame of your cuboid shape, and it can be in various dimensions, but you always have to have a cuboid shape that's your outer frame, and it has to be made, I believe, entirely out of these casings. Then on the faces, there are certain blocks that can go on the faces, and there are certain other blocks that can go in the interior. And I am going to go ahead and finish up building this, and I'll be right back. I am going to go ahead and put in probably the bottoms as well. Alright, I have built out the frame on both cubes completely, and on one of them I have put in a side and a back wall. It's time to go ahead and arrange some other blocks. Each reactor is going to need a reactor controller, which is embedded in the face of the reactor like that. It doesn't matter where you put it, but it must be embedded in one of the side faces. Each one is also going to need 2 access ports, and the access ports are where fuel goes in and comes out. And I'm not going to put those at the very bottom. I'm going to put them like right up here on this side. And I have not planned out in great detail exactly how this is going to go, but one of the access ports will always be an input and the other one will be an output, and we can switch that here between inlet and outlet on this button right here that you can barely see because we got that. Okay, so this one is input and output, and over here I think I'm going to do it the other way. So we've got the output on the right over here, and it's on the right on both sides, but one of them is towards the front and the other one is towards the back. Okay, then we need a power tap. You've got to actually be able to draw your power out of the system and send it somewhere. And let's see what we got up here. We do have space on top for like capacitor banks. That may be where I go ahead and put that. So let's just put the power tap up near the top here. Now there are other blocks you can put in here for control, and I'm not going to use any of them. I'm just going to let these things run continuously, but I will take and manually throttle it way down so that it doesn't heat up very much and it uses fuel very slowly. It's a big reactor, and it will hold a lot of fuel, and it will generate quite a bit of power even if it's running at very low power levels. I'm actually expecting that both of these reactors, once they're fully fueled, will probably be producing, even throttled down to where they're only running at 10% of their maximum rate, they'll probably be producing around 14,000 or so RF per tick, which is pretty nice. I'm investing a lot of materials in doing that, but by running it so slowly, it runs very cool, and the cooler you run it up to a point, the more fuel efficient it is. So with those in place now, let's go ahead and I'm going to make the front to where I can see in it. So I'm just going to use reactor glass. These walls can contain any of these control items, plus they can be made of either reactor glass or reactor casing. That goes for the top and the bottom as well, although there's a special consideration on the top that we'll get to in a minute. But the glass blocks are a little more expensive than the casing because each one of them is basically casing plus a couple pieces of hardened glass. So I'm going cheap and only putting glass on the front. And I will put it on the front on both of them, but I'm not going to do that just yet. I'll wait until off camera to do that. So on this side over here, I'm just going to fill it in with more casings. Can't see through it, can't see inside the reactor. If you want to see inside, really, there's not that much to see inside it. You can see that it's fully fueled, but really it's just kind of a it's just for visual eye candy without actually having any functional purpose that you can see inside it. Okay, so the next step is going to be the fuel rods. And I'm just going to lay my fuel rods out. You can lay them out in any pattern you like. I'm just going to put them in a basic checkerboard pattern. The spaces in between will get filled with coolant and moderator, and I have already decided what I'm going to use for that, and I've made the liquid. You can leave them empty, in which case it will just be air. That will not be very efficient with your fuel. Most people fill them with the most efficient material, which I think is probably resonant ender. I've decided I'm not going to use resonant ender this time, though I've certainly used it in the past. Takes quite a few ender pearls to do that, and I think I can get by almost as well with a material that's quite a bit cheaper. I'm going to use gelid cryothium. So there are a lot of these rods to stack up in here, and remember these are the expensive item because they contain all that plutonium and all of those iron plates that take forever to make. Okay, my first placement mistake there. Grab it up. Don't need Silk Touch for these, although my pick is Silk Touch. These will actually go up to here, not all the way to the top level. So let me go ahead and finish these and I will be right back. Alright, I've finished placing all of my fuel rods. Now what I need to do is on top of each fuel rod I need a control rod. Just like that. The important point here is that you can't, if you don't put a control rod on top of it, you won't have any way to control it, but I don't think it will work at all. I don't think it will do anything with your fuel rod. I could possibly be wrong on that, but because I've never actually done it without a control rod. But just put control rods up and you'll be good. Alright, so we've got all those control rods up there now. The last step is to fill it with moderator. And if you choose to use something like, well, you can use a lot of different liquids in here, and some of them are quite hazardous. So you don't want to be in the position where you're having to break these things and go and fish stuff out if it accidentally falls in there. So I actually like going ahead and fully building out the reactor to begin with. There's what it looks like unfueled and unmoderated from the front. One of the nice things about gelid cryothium is that it's a falling liquid. So if I put the liquid down in there, it's actually going to fall to the bottom. So I can scoop this up and put it in here and fill up these columns from the top without having to worry about flowing liquids or anything like that. Now, you might not actually need to do that. I know at one time this mod did not care whether you had a flowing liquid or a stationary block. I've always filled them up with stationary blocks just to be on the safe side, so I don't know if it was ever changed. But if you use gelid cryothium, all these are stationary blocks because it's a liquid that falls. So I'm going to go ahead and finish filling up the reactor, and when I get done filling it up, I will take each of the holes up at the top and put a casing over it to completely fill it up. And I guess it will mark which ones have that because it will see the snow under, or it'll see the cold underneath it, and we'll have snow. So I'll be back when I have that done, and then we'll proceed with activating the reactor. Alright, I'm back. I finished filling the first reactor, and the second one I've used as much of my materials as I can at the moment. It's built as far as I can build it. I've still got to make quite a few fuel rods. Okay, so there's one last piece to put in place on the top here. And as soon as we put it in, the multi-block should form up. And it looks like it did. So we now have the glass became seamless, and it looks like we've got some slightly more decorative edges. So it's all set up. Seamless side here, sort of. So the next step is to actually get some fuel in this reactor. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use applied energistics directly That cable above there is green, so let's see if we've got some green cables. I don't, but I can make some. I'll just put these away for the time being. So I've got green cable there. And I need an interface. I've got one there. And I need a piece of yellorium, which I won't find in that terminal. So I've got nearly 7,000 yellorium. That's reasonable for the time being. I may eventually start to have scarcities if I burn it at a fast pace, but I don't plan on it. So we'll just see how that goes. So this one is input and this one is output. So I'm just going to put this directly over the input there. And I'm going to tell that interface that it is exporting yellorium. And I'll just tell it to export like that. Then I can connect this interface directly up to the AE system, like so. And it should start fueling the reactor. Maybe not. Maybe I need to do it. Yeah, that's just going to leave the fuel in there. I don't really like the way these things don't actually export. Let's come over here, do it this way. I can convert this back into a block port, like so. And we'll tell it to export into the block, and it does. Then we'll just come over here and use an Ender IO conduit to go the rest of the way. So that will insert and this will extract. So now we should be getting fuel in there. And you can see that visually the fuel rods show that they're filling with fuel. And a reactor this size will hold a lot of fuel. So its capacity is 700 ingots. And it's going to take a little while to completely do that. I could make it fuel faster by putting some speed upgrades on this conduit connector, but really long term that would be totally unnecessary. It's just going to fill up slowly, and then it will always have enough to refuel because it's just going to refuel a tiny trickle. So while that's going, let's look at the next thing that I'm going to need here. I went ahead and made some, I thought I did anyway. Okay, I guess I didn't actually make them. Let's go ahead and make some capacitor banks. And it looks like this is getting close to full now. It is full. So on the controller interface here, we have the amount of fuel that's in the system, the temperature of the casing, the temperature of the fuel, and the amount of the energy buffer. The reactor itself will hold 10 million RF. Then we have another item here that tells us the core temperature, which really should be the same as probably this. The amount of RF it's generating per tick, the amount of fuel that it's generating per tick, and the fuel reactivity. It says here higher levels of radiation reduce fuel burnup. So this is sort of a measure of our efficiency. We want this number to be higher. And we'd also like the energy output to be higher, but there's going to be a compromise between these two. And what we can do is we can tell it to auto-eject or do not auto-eject waste, and we can activate it or deactivate it. At the moment, it's in a deactivated state. Now up here on top on the control rods, we can set all of these however we want to. And I'm actually going to turn them way down. Let's see what we're at. We're at 90 there. That's fine. So I'll be back when I have all of these set. Alright, I'm back. I've set all 25 control rods. The next thing to do is to go ahead and set up the power storage, which I'm just going to do with these capacitors. I'm just going to put them on the front here in a big long row. And I suppose that these extra 3 in the middle can just go in the middle. The vibrant capacitors, of course, just form any shape you like pretty much. So that'll hold a 250 million RF. Now I've got to actually get the RF into the capacitors. One thing I could do, maybe that's what I should do with the extras. Let me come back up here. A problem that you can run into on these big reactors if you have them generating enough fuel is that you can run into a situation where you just can't output fast enough in order to keep up. Well, one way to deal with that is to go ahead and just set up your capacitor directly in front of it, because capacitors can actually input and output much faster than conduits can carry the power. And I'll just take and put this other piece right here, I guess, for now. So it does have some power in it, but that's just because of wireless charging while I had it in my inventory. Alright, so are we ready yet? I think so. Let's go ahead and turn this on. And we can see that it is heating up. We'd like to keep the temperature around, for maximum efficiency, I want to say somewhere around 700 to 750 degrees. You can run it much hotter than that, but I don't really want to. We're outputting, looks like 11,000 RF per tick here, and our efficiency is less than 1 millibucket per tick. And this fuel reactivity efficiency number is pretty good. It's up around 400. So we're up to around 700 C here. We're outputting over 12,000 per tick, so we're in good shape. I'll have to check and see how that's coming along in a little bit, but that looks pretty good. So we're charging up our capacitors here. So the next thing we want to do here is we need to be able to reprocess our fuel. And to do that, there's this thing called a cyanide reprocessor. And it requires water, and it inputs cyanide, which is the waste product from here, and we've already got one. And it outputs plutonium, which is fuel that unfortunately you can't put in this reactor, I don't think, because you have to fuel it with one or the other. So that's why I've built a pair of reactors here, aside from just wanting a pair of reactors to generate fuel faster. So the way we control this thing is we've got a red interface that's the input, and a green one that's the output, and actually a blue one that is the water input. We're inputting water on the bottom, so there we go. And let's go ahead and input on the top, and we'll output on the side over here. So this configures just like that. It's reasonably straightforward. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some more conduits. I appear to have put my conduits away. just come over here and I'll disconnect this one. So on the green channel, we're going to be extracting our cyanite and we're going to insert there. And this other reactor will also be able to extract cyanite. And just to make the colors all sort of match up so that we know what's going on, why don't I go ahead and change this to the blue channel. And we'll go ahead and put the blue channel here as the input. And the blue channel here. And then we'll input plutonium on the yellow channel. Just like that. And then over here, I'm not ready to hook it up, but I'll go ahead and make this one say that it's the yellow channel. And I can go ahead and, I guess, connect everything, but then go and disconnect right there. So we'll tell that to extract automatically, and this one will extract automatically. So we should have some cyanide in here. It's already got 4 of them, so it's going to go through fuel pretty quickly. I'll have to turn it off until I'm actually ready to use the power, at least once the thing charges, because at that rate it's going to go through my 6,000 or 7,000 fuel faster than I would like. At least faster than I'm producing it. So let's see what's next here. This machine requires power. So let's get some of these power conduits. And, so it has power now, and the face went blue, which means it's working. So it's processing cyanite to produce plutonium. So when this reactor is done, we can start fueling it. It will take a long time, I think, to actually get this reactor fueled, although I am producing small amounts of plutonium from bees. It's just not enough that it will matter anytime soon. The other thing that still is left here is I'm going to be using the power somewhere, but obviously I'm not going to be using it where those big reactors are situated. And so what I've done is I've gotten some tesseracts. I went ahead and set up auto crafting for tesseracts. So I can just take a tesseract and put it on top of here, and I am going to set up a channel in here. We'll just say channel 1, main power, and we'll set it to that channel. And this one is going to send power, and it's directly on the capacitor bank. I think that it will pick up directly from the capacitor bank. If not, I can configure the capacitor to push into it. That will not be a problem. So where might I use this power? Well, one place to use it would be over here on the mob spawner, which I think has backup because it just doesn't have enough power. Let's take a look in there. It's kind of crowded in there, isn't it? But the main reason is probably because the inventory is crowded. Let me just go ahead and hook up the power here, and then I'll deal with that other problem. So we're going to go ahead and check that. And this is receiving power. So it should be receiving power pretty quickly now. That's full. And this pipe, which had a solid light blue bar in it, went totally dead when I did that because all the power is being supplied here. Good. So to fix that inventory problem, what's going on there is, you noticed it was full of enchanted items if you looked carefully. I just need to come over here and say book and tell it to craft, let's say a couple hundred books, so that books will be available, because whenever those enchanted items drop, they're getting disenchanted, but it requires books for that, and this was out of books. So it should get some books across the network pretty soon here because I've just set up auto crafting for them. And once those come in, it can start to clear out some of that backlog. There comes one right there. Yeah, there we go, 11 of them. So it's working on clearing those out. And in the meantime, I guess I'm done for the day. Looks like we've got some huge new reactors here. So I will see you next time when I've got these working a little better. Thank you for watching.